The airline counter smelled like burnt coffee and cold floor cleaner. 5 passports slid across the scale. 5 boarding passes printed. Not mine. I was 15, holding a small gray suitcase while my mother's new husband checked his watch and his kids whispered about Bali. The agent looked at my mother. There's no ticket for her. My mother touched my elbow, guided me beside a gift shop, and folded $200 into my palm. "You can figure it out," she said, then shrugged. I watched her walk through security. Hours later, the man she told me abandoned me arrived. Before Grant Mercer, my mother knew how to stretch a paycheck until it looked almost respectable. Our apartment in Portland had thin walls, a humming refrigerator, and kitchen tile that stayed cold even in July. Valerie worked double shifts and came home with her hair pinned crooked, smelling like coffee and fryer oil. I learned early not to ask for much. I could make boxed macaroni without burning the pot. I could fold laundry while watching the clock. I could hear her key in the lock and know by the sound whether to speak or stay quiet. Back then, she still called me her girl. My father, Ethan Vale, existed mostly in pieces. A birthday card from when I was 6, a memory of him making pancakes shaped like crooked, smiley faces. A deep laugh from some afternoon I could never place. When I asked why he stopped calling, my mother's mouth would tighten. He moved on. Lux. She said it like closing a drawer. I believed her because children believed the person packing their lunches. Still, some part of me held on to those pancakes. They were always uneven, sometimes burned at the edges, but he had placed them in front of me with such careful pride that the memory refused to disappear. Then Valerie met Grant. He came into the restaurant where she worked wearing pressed shirts and an expensive watch. Within months, we were living in his house. A wide place with polished stairs, glass doors, a pool, and more rooms than I knew what to do with. His children already belonged there. Sienna had the largest bedroom and a way of looking at me that made every shirt I owned feel cheap. Cole barely spoke, but when he did, adults listened. Tessa was sweet for about a week, until she realized ignoring me earned approval. The family photos changed first. In the hallway, there were framed pictures of Grant with his kids at beaches, ski lodges, school ceremonies, after the wedding. Valerie appeared in them too, smiling like she had been there all along. I was in one photo near the staircase, half turned, my face caught between expressions. At dinner, Grant asked Sienna about debate, Cole about soccer, Tessa about piano. When I mentioned an essay prize at school, Valerie smiled too quickly and said, "That's nice, honey." Before asking Grant if the country club needed a deposit, my room was at the end of the hall, beside the linen closet, smaller than the others, quieter, easy to forget. I tried to earn space. I complimented Tessa's drawings. I offered to help Cole with homework. I laughed when Sienna called me the bonus kid, even though no one else laughed afterward. By the time Bali was announced, I had already learned the rule. In that house, I did not have to be told I was extra. I only had to notice who got packed first. Grant announced Bali on a Thursday night. We were sitting at the long dining table under the chandelier that made everyone's faces look polished and far away. He described the resort like he was reading from a brochure: private villas, ocean view, 2 weeks, a driver waiting at the airport. Valerie smiled at him like each word was a gift. "Family trip," he said. I looked down at my plate so no one would see how fast I believed him. For a few days, I let myself imagine it. I pictured warm water, white sheets, breakfast outside, maybe one photo where I stood close enough to look like I belonged. Then Valerie took Sienna and Tessa shopping for vacation clothes without me. When I asked, she was folding a linen dress on her bed. "You have plenty. Lux." I looked at the tag still hanging from Sienna's new sandals. I did not answer. That Saturday, I used babysitting money to buy a blue one-piece swimsuit from a clearance rack. I folded it into my small gray suitcase like proof. The night before we left, I walked past Valerie and Grant's bedroom and heard my name. "What about the arrangements for Lux?" Grant asked. "All handled," my mother said. "She won't be a problem." I stood in the hallway with one hand on the wall. The air conditioner hummed above me, somewhere downstairs. Tessa laughed at a video on her phone. In the morning, no one mentioned my passport. In the SUV, they argued over window seats. No one asked where I wanted to sit. At the airport, Grant handed the agent a stack of documents. Valerie adjusted her sunglasses on top of her head. Sienna leaned against her suitcase and watched me like she already knew the ending. The printer clicked. 1 boarding pass, 2, 3, 4, 5. The agent looked at the screen again. I looked at my mother. There were 5 names on that reservation. Mine was not one of them. After my mother walked through security, I stayed where she left me. People moved around me in clean streams. Wheels clicked over tile. A man in a navy suit stepped around my suitcase without looking down. Somewhere above me, a woman's voice announced final boarding for a flight to Denver. I watched the Bali flight on the departure board. Boarding, final call, departed. That last word sat there in bright white letters, neat and official. Departed, as if a screen could make abandonment sound like a schedule change. I called Valerie first. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. I texted her. Mom, I'm still at the airport. Then another. I don't have my house key. Then one more. Please answer. The messages showed delivered. They stayed unanswered. I found a seat near a closed luggage shop and opened my hand. The $200 had softened from my grip. One corner was damp against my palm. I folded it once, then twice, and put it inside the front pocket of my suitcase. Not because it helped, because I needed my hands empty. An hour passed, then another. At some point, I bought the cheapest thing I could find at a small airport cafe, a basket of fries, so I could sit at a table without anyone asking me to move. My phone battery had dropped below 20%. The screen kept dimming while I stared at my contacts. A waitress with silver hoops and tired eyes stopped beside my table. Her name tag said, Marisol. You waiting for someone? Honey. I nodded before I could stop myself. She looked at my untouched fries, then at my face. She did not ask the question again. A few minutes later, she set down a small chocolate milkshake with a paper straw. Kitchen made an extra, she said. There was no extra. I knew that. She knew that. I thanked her, but the words came out too thin. When she walked away, I pushed the milkshake back and forth between my hands until the condensation wet my fingers. A stranger had noticed more in 5 seconds than my mother had noticed in 5 years. That was when I stood up and went to the restroom. The fluorescent light made my face look pale and unfinished. I locked myself in the last stall, sat on the closed toilet lid, and plugged my phone into the portable charger I kept for school. It blinked once, weakly. I opened my contacts. Ethan Vale. Dad. The name looked almost fake on the screen, like an old label stuck to something I was not supposed to open. Valerie had spent years sanding him down into a warning. Unstable. Unreliable. Moved on. Not the kind of man a daughter could count on. She said it so often that sometimes I heard her voice even when she was not in the room. My thumb hovered over the call button. The worst thing he could do was not answer. The second worst thing was answer and confirm she had been right. I pressed call. It rang 3 times. Then a man's voice came through, low and careful. Hello, for a second. I could not speak. Hello, Dad. Silence. Then his breath changed. Lux. My mouth opened, but all the practiced sentences disappeared. I need help. Something in his voice sharpened immediately. Where are you? The airport, Portland. Mom left me here. No long pause. No disbelief performed for effect. No lecture. Are you alone? Yes. Are you hurt? No. Listen to me. Go to the airline customer service desk. Tell them you're a minor and you were left without a guardian. I'm calling them as soon as we hang up. Stay where staff can see you. Do not leave with anyone else. I'm coming. You don't have to. I'm coming. Lux. He said it like a door closing against wind. I wiped my face with my sleeve, left the restroom, and walked to the customer service desk. My knees felt loose, but my voice held. My mother left me here, I said. I'm 15. My father is on the phone. The woman behind the counter stopped typing. Within minutes, I was in a small waiting room behind a glass door. Someone brought me water, a sandwich wrapped in plastic, and a charger. They asked for my mother's name, the flight number, the time she boarded, and where I had been standing. I answered everything. Then I started saving things, screenshots of my unanswered texts, call logs, a photo of the departure board, a note with Marisol's name, the time the Bali flight left, the folded $200. I did not know yet what any of it meant. I only knew that for the first time that day. I was not just crying. I was recording. Nearly 3 hours later, an airline supervisor came into the room. "Lux, your father is here." She led me through a quiet corridor to a smaller terminal where the windows faced the runway. Outside, under blue-white lights, a private jet sat with its stairs lowered. The engine made a low sound that I felt more than heard. A man stepped down in a dark coat. He was older than the memory I had kept. Silver at the temples, straighter posture, same eyes. He stopped a few feet from me, as if he knew distance mattered now. "Lux," he said. I stood there with my suitcase handle in one hand and nothing left to hold up my face. "She said you didn't want me." His jaw tightened, not for one day. On the flight to Seattle, he opened a leather folder on the table between us. Inside were years of cards, letters, payments, bills, court papers, and records of attempts to reach me. He did not push them toward me like evidence in a fight. He turned them slowly, one by one, letting me see the dates, birthdays, Christmases, school years I thought he had missed by choice. My mother had not just left me at the airport. She had been leaving me out of the truth for years. I looked out the window at the dark line of the coast below us. This time, I would not fix what they had broken. I would let the paper speak. Seattle was quiet in a way Portland never had been. My father's house sat above the water, all glass, pale stone, and muted light. In the morning, I woke in a blue room with clean sheets and a desk by the window. For a few minutes, I did not know where I was. Then I saw my gray suitcase beside the closet and remembered everything. Ethan knocked once before opening the door. "There's someone here to meet you," he said. "Only if you're ready." Nora Whitfield was waiting downstairs with a leather tote and a paper cup of coffee. She was a family lawyer, maybe in her 50s, with short gray hair and the kind of stillness that made people lower their voices around her. She did not call my mother evil. She did not promise revenge. She placed a yellow legal pad on the table and said, "We need to make sure you are safe." That was the first sentence that made sense. For the next 2 hours, we built a timeline, not a story, a timeline. Valerie drove me to the airport. Grant checked in 5 passengers. The Bali flight departed. My calls went unanswered. My texts stayed unanswered. The airline staff moved me to a safe waiting area. Ethan arrived. Nora asked for screenshots, call logs, the flight time, the names of staff who helped me, and copies of the papers Ethan had kept, payments, bills, letters, court records, every year folded into clean stacks. I sat beside my father while the printer worked. Page after page came out warm. No one raised their voice. No one had to. 2 days later, we flew back to Portland. Nora came with us. So did 2 movers and a quiet assistant from her office who carried a clipboard. I still had legal residence in Grant's house. Nora had already confirmed what I could remove my clothes, school things, personal keepsakes, and anything addressed to me. Nothing else. No drawers that were not mine, no files that did not concern me, no revenge disguised as packing. The house smelled the same when I opened the front door. Lemon cleaner, cold air, expensive candles Valerie lit before leaving, as if a good smell could keep a house from telling the truth. The hallway photos watched us go by. Grant at the beach with Sienna, Cole and Tessa, Valerie in a white sundress beside him, a ski trip, a school recital, a framed family portrait near the staircase where I stood half out of frame, one shoulder blurred, like someone had decided too late not to crop me out. My room was at the end of the hall. The movers packed quickly, clothes, books, my school folders, a chipped ceramic dish I had made in 7th grade, the blue swimsuit still folded in my suitcase, tags cut off, never used. In the back of my closet, behind an old pair of sneakers, I found the envelopes. They were bound with a rubber band. My name was written across each one. Lux, Lux, Lux. Birthdays, Christmases. One for the year I turned 13. Another with a photo tucked inside of Ethan standing outside a building I had never seen, smiling like he hoped I might see it someday. Nora photographed the stack before I touched it. Then she handed the first envelope to me. My father stood in the doorway. He did not come closer. I opened the card. The handwriting was careful. I hope this reaches you. My fingers stopped moving. For years, Valerie had told me silence meant he had left. The silence had been sitting in my closet. By late afternoon, my room was empty. The bed was stripped. The desk was bare. The closet door hung open. I placed my house key in the center of the mattress. Beside it, I left a short letter. Not an accusation, not a plea, just the truth. I am safe. I am with Dad. All communication needs to go through Nora. The official legal notice would be delivered through the proper channel. Nora made sure of that, but a copy waited beside the key. White paper against a pale sheet. When Valerie came home from Bali 3 days later, I was not there to watch. I only heard about it afterward. Her suitcase stopped outside my door. The room was empty. The key was on the bed. The notice had her name at the top. My phone started ringing that evening. Again, again, again. I did not answer. Nora did. For the first time in my life, my mother could not reach me by rewriting the room. The room had already spoken. The legal process did not move like a movie. It moved like paper. Forms, appointments, copies, dates circled on calendars, Nora's voice on speakerphone, Ethan signing where she told him to sign. My name appearing in documents beside words adults had always used around me but rarely for me. Safety, preference, best interest. Temporary custody was granted first. Then came scheduled meetings, statements, and more pages. Valerie tried to call what happened a misunderstanding. Nora placed the timeline beside that word and let it collapse on its own. I did not have to make my mother look cruel. I only had to stop helping her look careful. Seattle became less strange by inches. The first week, I slept with my suitcase beside the closet because part of me still expected someone to say I had to leave. By the second week, I had put my books on the shelf. By the third, my blue swimsuit was folded in a drawer. Not because I needed it, but because it was mine and no one had left it behind. Ethan did not fill the silence with promises. He made breakfast. He asked before entering my room. He knocked even when the door was open. Small things, repeated things, the kind that made safety feel less like an event and more like weather. One morning, I came downstairs to the smell of butter burning. He was standing at the stove in sweatpants and an old t-shirt, trying to make pancakes. The first one was too pale. The second had a dark edge. The third looked almost like a face if I tilted my head and wanted it badly enough. The memory returned without asking. A small kitchen, a younger version of me, a crooked pancake placed in front of me with serious pride. For years, I had treated that memory like something fragile, something a child had invented to survive. But there it was again, steaming on a plate in Seattle, uneven and real. I sat at the counter and watched morning light move across the kitchen. The airport came back sometimes, the floor cleaner, the gate, the $200 in my hand. My mother's shoulder lifting in that small, careless shrug. I still had the bills. I slid them into a plain envelope and placed it in the back of my desk drawer. Not as a shrine, as evidence that I had stopped waiting there. My mother told me to figure it out. So I did. I learned that abandonment is not always the end of a family story. Sometimes it is the first clean line between the person who walked away and the person who came back. I never called it revenge. I called it being safe, years later. I still remember the sound of those boarding passes printing without my name, but I also remember the quiet after. The silence was not empty anymore. It sounded like a door finally locking from the inside. If this story stayed with you, leave a quiet word below.